Well, there's a whole stuff. The Human Solution started before the raid. It started actually when I got arrested the first time.
What do you want to talk about first?
Well, I'll talk about the collective.
Okay.
And then I'll talk about what got me going from being a collective owner to an activist. Because I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was. I'll go through the history of how I was originally as a grower and completely underground to what happened that brought me to this point, because that's a whole
and we're going to want to know about your case and where you're at and how we can help you and what people can do to help you. Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it.
So anyways,
we're back with Joe Grumbine at the Willow Creek Botanical Garden.
Willow Creek Springs Botanical Gardens and Nursery. You betcha.
Sorry, medicated earlier.
It's all right.
We can cut that and say that again. All right. We're back with Joe Grumbine at the Willow Creek Springs Botanical Gardens here in the beautiful butterfly area with hummingbirds above us and all these trees he's done here.
Absolutely.
We're going to hear from Joe about his collective and his work with the medical patients.
Well, so I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. So now we're in 2006, 2007. I had a friend named Shannon who, from back in the late 80s, taught me everything I knew about growing cannabis. I always liked to grow plants, but I met this guy and I had built a little grow room and I didn't know anything. I mean, I was clueless and I did it ass backwards, but I wanted to do it. And so I had gone through the trouble of building a structure and some semblance of a grow system, and he came in, he says, well, you want to do this right? And so he started to set me up in an indoor grow, and then we started growing outdoors, and we started doing genetic work, and you know, for 20 years we grew together. Wow. And we grew guerrilla style, and you know, there's places off the
Give me a description of guerrillas. That's a lot of
work.
A lot of cultural work, yeah.
A lot of work, absolutely.
Wow.
You got to find an out-of-the-way place that is, well, basically
like
just
a mission, huh?
like you're on a mission. Exactly.
Okay, got it. Nice.
So, anyways, I did that for a lot of years, and you know, I grew enough for me and for a little more, and you know, I was gangster, and you know, I wasn't worried about it. It's a plant, you know, for God's sake. And I took risks, and I really didn't care.
Is there a lot of violence with that life?
Violence, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you tripped and fell. I broke my hand one time falling into a creek, and so that was kind of violent.
Like workman's comp type of injuries, but not really.
Yeah,
not really like.
Yeah, no violence in the workplace.
I think she was more going at. Did you come across any drug cartel?
Never had a cartel problem. Yeah.
Because you know we hear it in the news. We always hear, oh, this drug cartel.
Well, we hear shotguns.
Yeah, never needed to have any guns for what I did.
Like
so not so dangerous.
Yeah, no, really didn't need that.
Okay.
I just kind of went where people weren't.
Wow, that really goes against the national statistics of Oz. You would think that if that were the case, there'd be more dead people on those mountains.
Well, I was probably the one exception to that rule. I think everybody else is heavily armed and causing the world lots and lots of problems. I was probably the only guy that did it in a peaceful way. But
wow. Well, they're still not racking up the body counts either, so
true.
I don't think they're really doing a good enough job if that's what their concept.
Think, yeah, they're ineffective.
Okay, so you're.
So, anyways, but what happened was my buddy ended up getting brain cancer, and Shannon, he went from you know, probably one of the strongest guys I ever knew, you know, 6'2", strong as an ox, to, you know, carrying him to the bar to have a drink with him because he couldn't walk anymore. And he came out here a lot. You know, he was an electrician. He actually helped me wire this whole place up. And but towards the end, he got his medical card, and you know, I harvested his last crop for him, and he got to a point where he couldn't smoke. And so I went in, or I actually couldn't go in because I didn't have a card, and I still wasn't ready to get one because I just said, you know, I mean, really, I didn't buy it. I didn't think that I was protected. I really didn't. And you know, I was watching, you know, the news, watching people get raided. I was watching, you know, all the cases that, you know, that started, and I was like, wow, this is just a joke. These guys are just feeding off of us. And anyways,
It became real, huh?
well, no,
I mean, these people were getting their businesses just crushed, and
it was really bad, yeah.
yeah.
And at the same time, my partner, we were doing real estate. We were working in real estate for a lot of years, and my partner was always saying, you know, we should do one of these. And I'm thinking, I don't know. Him and I grew together, and you know, he was more of a businessman than I, and I'm the guy that always gave stuff away. So I was like, you know.
So you weren't a profit person?
No,
from the beginning?
no.
Yeah,
I give everything away. Anyways, the real estate market crashed. Shannon died. I watched it his last days, how effective some of the honeys and tinctures and things that people were making now. You know, I mean, you know, it wasn't just, you know, Joe's little liqueurs that he made, you know, once in a while. And it started seeming, you know, a lot more legitimate, and you know, I was reading more about it and more positive benefits of people getting off of medications and whatnot. Well, then the market crashed, and I was in a spot where I had a thriving business that all of a sudden was gone, and I couldn't.
Plants were more a luxury, and your nursery.
Well, I started my nursery. I started my nursery out here. That's a whole nother story, but we had a wedding business that we had a neighbor that had a problem with it and fought the county, ended up becoming this nursery because they will let us be a nursery. And this has always been a passion and a hobby, but I'm not good at marketing, and I'm at the end of a dirt road, and so, you know, I sell plants sporadically to landscapers and people that come out here when I do little events, but you know, it's not a place people are gonna accidentally drive by, so it's kind of a hidden secret and not an easy place to market in that sense. And I don't have a budget to put up a billboard or anything, so you know, I kept this thing. You know, we've been slowly building it forever, but it's not ever. I mean, it's paid its water bill and a little bit more, but I've not made much money off of this nursery yet. So we decided, he actually decided to go and, you know, figure this out. So ultimately I got my recommendation, and I said, you know, so I could go and look at other places. And it seemed that the model that we were seeing, we picked a little bit from one place, a little bit from another place, things that made sense, that were professional.
Since everything was so in the new, and
there was no
really
rules or reasons to it. There were no guidelines.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything. There was, you know, places where these occurred, and so we figured out a place that didn't have a ban. We got a landlord that was cool with it, and we literally built it from scratch, and we opened up. And I thought, really, I says, well, I think it's legitimate enough to do now. And I thought, you know, if we're careful and you know, don't be stupid, we probably won't have any problems. And I said, even if 20% of the patients are legitimate, it's worth it. You know, and I thought, really, I don't know how many people are legitimate, how many aren't. I mean, and I really didn't care. I really didn't care. I'm not a doctor. It's not for me to decide. If
well, I mean, a good question I'd want to ask you is, did you see a behavior difference between anybody, one A or B, that would make you think that somebody was frivolous with it?
Well, again, I never even considered that as important. And the reason why is, if you're on a pain medication or you're on an antibiotic and you act a certain way, is it for me to judge if it's because of something you should or shouldn't do? I don't give a damn. You know, and
I only ask that because at city council meetings they often describe that there's kids that will go to these dispensaries, that they're lying, that they faked something, and then they come out and they flaunt, or they act boastful and everything. And I myself am a patient and have been to many places to you know, just do my personal stuff, and I've yet to ever see that.
My experience has always been with people that the people will behave as you allow them to. And if I was to create an environment that was a party atmosphere or something that was
you could expect
encouraging that kind of behavior,
okay.
I think it would have happened. But what we did is we set up more like a doctor's office. And we wore lab coats, and we had good medicine in ways that people could look at it and learn about it. And you know, I would spend time with every patient and try to learn what worked with them. And I come to realize that, you know, probably 80% of the patients were in an easy way for me to determine that this was a real and meaningful medicine for them. And even if I couldn't tell, even if it was a kid who came up and appeared as though it was even recreational, it's not for me to decide, because I found out several of the people that seemed just fine actually were battling all kinds of serious ailments. It doesn't always show. You and me and her all look healthy when you look at us, but maybe there's something dreadfully wrong.
You hear that,
right under the
America?
surface.
You can't always read that book by the cover.
Exactly.
You're hearing this.
So anyways, you know, the collective grew, while the dispensary grew. The AG guidelines came out in August, September of 08. Of course, that came to our attention, and September of 08, the city that my collective was in, Garden Grove, decided to vote in a ban. Well, when they were discussing that, it came to our attention, and I go, holy crap, you know, and so I called on Asa and Normal and all the people that I knew. I says, hey, we got a problem, we need to get some people in here. So I showed up at a city council meeting, probably not for the first time, but for the first time with an intent. And I was like, wow, this is pretty goofy. These people are boneheads. What are they doing, having any power? And it was really ridiculous.
It's funny you say that.
Yeah, well, it was ridiculous. And these people had a methodology and a logic that defied any method or logic. And their fears, I mean, I can remember one of the council people who was afraid that, she said, well, the reason that we think we need a ban is because we're afraid that somebody's going to get some medicine from one of these dispensaries and get sick from it. They're going to come back and sue the city. And
now, can I ask you, was there dispensaries open at the time that they made that decision?
There was us.
Yeah.
And how many others?
There was a couple of others that were there that had been raided and shut down. That's the Felix Koch case. Had happened just before I got into it. Is when that finally the final ruling had happened where the city had to give the money back. There was a couple of other dispensaries in Garden Grove.
Over a little time frame.
Over
like
a year or two
close.
before, yeah, that had been shut
down. And in that time, nobody'd ever had an overdose or something like that.
Nobody ever died.
Yeah,
Nobody ever even got sick, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay,
I mean, you know, people eat a brownie sometimes and don't know what to expect, and they can construe that experience as being sick, but really, it was,
when they go to the hospital, they're told that there's nothing wrong.
There's
with
nothing
them.
wrong with them. There's
they're
nothing,
told that. Yes.
You just sit
You hear
down,
that
and
too,
it'll go
America.
away. And, yeah, exactly.
Go lay down and drink some water, and you'll be okay.
Relax, and you'll be fine. Well,
that's the result of a hospital overdose when they rush down for their brownie overdose.
So ultimately, what happened was they enacted a ban, but we were there before the ban, and so we said, well, we're just going to continue being here. We've not had any problem with the city. They've had their code enforcement people over, had the cops in multiple times, and nobody ever said we had a problem. And so we just continued to be there.
Well, as a non-conforming use, like you should have been allowed a grandfather. You should have been allowed to be grandfathered in for non-conforming use and allow you to come into a conforming use.
There's a lot of ways they could have resolved it in a positive and still following their
state law and allowing
all of these laws,
respecting the people's rights.
Exactly. And there was never a complaint from anybody. This didn't happen out of a complaint. What happened was out of Anaheim's ban. Garden Grove wanted to be just like Anaheim, and so that was what was behind it all. Anyways, they enact the ban.
Garden Grove wasn't upset enough about marijuana, as I'm sure.
Well, they pretended that they didn't know we were there, and we called them on it, and even their city attorney had to admit that, well, actually they did know, and they looked a little bad, but these things, it's a joke, okay? And they passed the ban. We continued in existence and didn't have any problem. We never got a cease and desist.
That was my
we
next
never
question.
got any notice whatsoever.
Yeah. Seems like a warning would have at least been
Anything.
in order.
Never an official notice from the city. The landlord
Straight, right? They didn't contact the landlord?
They contacted him when we first opened up and they realized what we were.
Your landlord?
And the landlord asked them specifically, are they breaking the law? And they said no. And he said, then I don't have a problem with it. And that was it. And so the landlord stood behind us. Anyways, as we built this collective from scratch, we didn't have any money to do this. We had no corporate funding. We had nothing. We were actually
You had the
coming
members
out of
the
a failed
collective.
business, and so the build out was really slow, and we didn't have ample security in the beginning, and so we were literally taking the medicine home every night. And one night, while I was my turn to take the medicine home, I got pulled over, and in Riverside, only a mile and a half from this place. And next thing I know,
all accidents, right? 2 miles
yeah,
from your home or
well,
whatever.
yeah, exactly.
Isn't that
So
a laugh?
next thing I know, I'm in jail for the first time in my life,
Ah.
and next thing I know, I'm facing felony charges for the first time in my life, hiring an attorney for the first time in my life, finding out
At
that
the costs of amounts you never even
I could have
fathomed.
never
Well, you're already from a
imagined.
failed business. You
I
didn't
already,
have the money
I
to
already
start.
had no money.
Yeah.
Well, then when they arrested me, they took all my money and all my medicine, so now I have nothing.
Your profit options to pay back what you
nothing.
invested is even
It's all gone. Now
Yeah.
I owe people money, and I'm trying to
all
find
your
a lawyer.
expenses for growing and everything is
Everything.
all out.
Well, you got to
Oh,
understand,
man.
people give. You know, you got member cultivators that are donating their medicine to you.
Oh, as
Exactly.
well.
So you get it. So he may not.
Oh.
The collective may not have been able to reimburse this
We weren't.
cultivator
were
yet.
I owed
reimbursement to them.
people.
Now all of
their
a sudden the
donations.
responsibility is no longer the
Man.
collective, so the
Right.
members.
It's
It's
landed
now
on
it's the
my lap.
owner,
Yeah,
and that's why I
yeah.
try to tell people there is a difference between a collective and an owner, the
Absolutely.
operator, the director.
We're the
end
Well, I
of
was
it, it's
thinking
you.
in my farmer view of like my costs for the lights.
But if
or
you
whatever,
if you
stuff
bring
like that,
in
nutrients.
if you bring in to me medicine that you grew that was more than you needed and said, here, I'm going to donate this to the collective, and when you're
I still need my money for that light though.
Exactly.
Yeah,
The electricity, the
for that
nutrients,
and
the
regardless
time.
of the
And
even
that's
of
what
the
you're
semantics
entitled-
for it, there's a reasonable exchange that's allowed for it in the law.
Yeah, I knew